The more we know, the easier it's going to be for us to play with phrasing, to improvise with the melody, and to communicate with our band. Something I tell my students all the time is that that sound kind of feels like it's by your teeth, in this little envelope right here. First thing I want to talk about is tone. That is the biggest difference between more classical style singing and jazz singing, is the tone. So generally, when you're singing jazz, the vowel shapes are going to be smaller. Thinking closer to the normal way that you speak. The delivery in a jazz song is going to be a speech-like quality. This is the biggest difference I find between classical and jazz. When you're trying to achieve this, if this is something that's tricky for you, something that I love to do is take a phrase that I just say often, like, hello, how are you? And take that, speak it a few times, and then I might put it to some pitches as a warm-up, aiming to sound as speech-like as possible. We're not trying to sing this exercise. So I might say, hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? And I'm really only gonna play with this around my chest voice area. I'm not gonna take it up to the rafters. So if I take this through a few keys, hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? I might take that through a few different keys, paying very close attention to the tone and the vowel shape. If you notice, it's very much towards the front of my mouth. Something I tell my students all the time is that that sound kind of feels like it's by your teeth, in this little envelope right here. So that's going to feel a little different than maybe how you might normally sing. You're aiming to speak on pitch for this exercise. So speaking of that, on that note, you're going to have a generally brighter and lighter sound than you might if you're singing classical music. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule, though. If you go to listen to some of my favorite jazz singers of all time, you'll hear big, rich sound with lots of vibrato. Thinking Sarah Vaughan. You turn on that Sarah Vaughan record and you've got so much big sound, so much vibrato, this dark, rich, warm sound. So don't go into this thinking, okay, no vibrato, tiny sound. Not at all. This is just a general rule and exercise to get into that more speech-like place when we get to that repertoire. When it comes to vibrato, we have lots of feelings about vibrato. When it comes to vibrato, you're generally going to use it less. You're not going to hear vibrato through an entire phrase. You'll hear it at the end just to warm up the sound a little bit, add some sparkle. But you're not going to hear it all the way through. So for example, if I take one of the tunes we're going to be visiting in a future section, September in the Rain, I can sing this first phrase, the leaves of brown came tumbling down, remember, with this beautiful, gorgeous vowels and vibrato all the way through. While it's beautiful, it's not really authentic to this singing style. So taking all those concepts I just mentioned, smaller vowel shape, less vibrato throughout and just a little on the end. The leaves of brown came tumbling down, remember that September in the rain. And now you're closer to that more authentic jazz style. Still some vibrato sprinkled in there, but just a little less, used more sparingly with some discretion. Now, we're going to be going over 3 main subgroups of jazz vocal repertoire in this course. So first we're going to visit swing tunes, ballads, and then bossa novas. Many of these tunes that we call standards come from what we call the Great American Songbook, which is not necessarily a physical songbook, but more of a concept of a collection of a lot of the popular music written throughout the 20th century. A lot of these songs were written for stage productions and film. So the cool thing about all of the technical things we just covered is you can often hear the differences from when these tunes were originally recorded in their theatrical context to when they were later interpreted by jazz singers. So take any Great American Songbook standard, go on Google, look it up, find the original recording, you'll hear that golden age musical sound with the tall vowels and the vibrato. It might not even be with a swing eighth note feel. And then find a recording from 10 years later, Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, any other jazz singer that you love, and you'll be able to hear those distinct technical differences that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. Now, let's talk warming up. You do not have to reinvent your warm-up routine when it comes to jazz singing. A lot of the technical concepts are the same. Your instrument is still your instrument. So when it comes to support, breath management, paying attention to any tension creeping in, intonation, all those things are the same. So you don't need to change your warm-up, especially when it comes to those first few exercises that you do just to get your voice warm. So when it comes to your SOVT exercises, your simple scale patterns, all that stuff you can still do. If you like, you can incorporate the exercise that I visited a few minutes ago with trying to access that speech-like place with some sort of phrase that you speak often. Jumping off of that, now if I'm taking a scale pattern that I often sing, for example, something simple, mi, me, ma. Say we take that up through our range. Mi, me, ma. Right, I've got this nice, beautiful, tall, open vowel. I'm still gonna go for freely produced sound, good connection, good breath support, but I might think about that slightly smaller space, that slightly lighter and brighter sound. Mi, me, ma. Mi, me, ma. It's subtle, but you can totally hear the difference. So I'm just thinking ahead to the rep I'm going to be singing and making some slight adjustments. But like I said, you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. It's still your instrument. But when we're getting specific with jazz stuff, I do have a couple exercises that I love to do. So firstly, we're gonna throw in some scat syllables. Now you might be thinking, that's for a different course. We're not improvising right now. But I'll tell you why I love to do this. We're just gonna sing a major scale and sing it with scat syllables. This is going to do a couple things. It's gonna help us access that speech-like quality because you can't really sing scat syllables like this. It's really not possible. So it's gonna help us lock into that speech-like quality that we're looking for. It's also going to help us swing feel easier. And it's going to help us relieve any tongue or jaw tension that's possibly creeping in because it's really hard to sing eighth notes with swing scat syllables and have this be locked up. So it's gonna accomplish a couple things at the same time for us. So we're just gonna take a good old major scale and we're gonna sing up and down this scale with some scat syllables. So I'm gonna use do, va. They're gonna alternate. Do, va, 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 do. You can take this all the way through your range. I like to do something a little different, and instead of just doing the normal thing where we go up chromatically, like we do with every exercise, I like to go around circle of fourths or circle of fifths, because it keeps my ear and my brain engaged. So I might jump around. Go around fourths. And so on and so forth. You might notice that even though we're swinging, we still have this beautiful legato connected phrase. That's what you want. Don't for a second think that, okay, we're swinging, it's more rhythmic, I have to be percussive. Do va do va do va do. If we do that, that swing feel is gonna be clunky and heavy, and we want it to feel light. Do va 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 do. Connected all the way through. That's gonna come into play when we're singing a lyric as well, so keep that in mind. That's a really simple one. You can take through every key. Do it in circle of fourths, do it in circle of fifths, however you like to do it. The second exercise I love to do actually isn't a new exercise at all. We're just gonna take a pattern that you normally do. So say, let's see. We're gonna do an ascending arpeggio into a descending scale. Everybody does this, you've heard it a million times. Something like that. But instead of a major scale, I'm gonna throw in a different scale. I'm gonna pick a different scale, a different mode. It's gonna help wake up our ears, and it's gonna help us get used to some of the sounds that we're gonna be hearing in our repertoire. While we don't have to have the best knowledge of jazz harmony to be good jazz singers, the more we know, the easier it's going to be for us to play with phrasing, to improvise with the melody, and to communicate with our band. So all I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take any scale pattern that I already know really well, that I sing in warm-ups all the time. So let's take our lovely ascending arpeggio into a descending major scale. So the two scales that I love to throw in to change this up are Mixolydian and Dorian, both major modes, because we see these different scales a ton in our rep. So say I want to do Mixolydian. All we're going to do is take that lovely major scale and lower the seventh as we come down. Paying really close attention to that now whole step on the top, and then the half step between 7 and 6, those differences from our major scale. Same thing. If I want to do Dorian, I just do what I just did, but I'm going to lower the third as well. So now we've got a lowered third and a lowered 7. We're working on our technique and we're working on our ears. It's a double whammy. We love it.